Hey, welcome to this Money Monday edition of Liquid Lunch on Newsmax TV. I'm John Tobacco, coming to do as we do every day, Monday to Friday from noon to 1 Eastern. We are high atop Midtown Manhattan at the Newsmax headquarters. And, of course, we are in the Cuestión Tequila studios. And it was a terribly brutal weekend for America overall when after starting a nice sunny weekend here in New York, it all went awry on Saturday and Sunday when we started hearing about these horrific attacks, these two lone wolf, maniac, American homegrown terrorists who went out and started killing people arbitrarily for a host of reasons, which we'll get into later throughout the show, and why these things happen and how these things happen. We may never get to the bottom of it. But I was personally sickened to see, in the middle of one of the worst tragedies in America, or at least in recent history, the first instinct of the mainstream media and the left wing is to tie these terrible, heinous acts of violence to Donald Trump. And MSNBC took the reins right away with Peter Figliuzzi, former assistant director of counterintelligence for the FBI, who went on television right away on Sunday and said that he believes Donald Trump is complicit in these crimes, and he may actually be a co-conspirator and be charged with aiding and abetting for some of the statements he's made. But yet, the left wing continues to spew this vile rhetoric every day, repeating and rehashing all the things that they say makes Trump a racist. And that kind of inspires people and exemplifies and exponentially increases the hate that's out there. So while they want to stop the hate, they want to foment the hate every day by perpetrating these stories further and further and further. Trump came out today. I think he made some great points. I think he expressed remorse, some sympathy, and he also said pretty clearly, to what I could hear, that he rebukes all forms of hate and murder and violence in the name of race. So that's my 2 cents on this stuff. We're going to break it down today. We're going to mix it up. We're going to have Democrats, Republicans. We're going to have psychologists. We have all the great things you want to hear about. And when it's a Money Monday, it's always great to have the money man himself, Frank Money Morano, joining me again. Frank, a happy Monday for us, because it's our 10th week, but not the happiest of Mondays based on what's happening.
It is a rough morning, and especially a day that should be so festive. It is, of course, Lonnie Anderson's birthday, and it's a day that's usually celebrated from coast to coast, shore to shore. But the horrible incidents over the weekend cast a horrible cloud even over an august holiday like Lonnie Anderson's birthday. I do have to apologize for my slovenly appearance this morning. I overslept this morning and had to take a $62 Uber ride to make it to one of my other jobs, but it is also National Work Like a Dog Day. Unfortunately, I was at my friend Brian Silverstein's house, and I was the only one drinking, so they had one bottle of wine that I was left to consume entirely myself because I wasn't about to let the wine go bad.
That's pretty amazing.
Yes.
And I, on the other hand, have decided to make a life decision for myself and stop smoking cigarettes, which is a terrible habit.
I am happy.
And I am transitioning right now, identifying as a non-smoker, but using an e-cigarette still as an aid. And I'm trying not to become a fat pig at the same time. So I laid off drinking this weekend.
You're kidding.
And I took it very easy. I'm doing a little morning exercise now.
Has somebody checked the bullet stock that's probably in the tank?
I'm trying to make sure I'm around for Liquid Lunch for as long as possible.
Well, we're happy to hear that. You know, obviously, I'm being somewhat light, but it's a really, really tough morning when the big issue of the day has to do with two mass shootings. Now, it's my contention, and we'll play you some of what the president said in his remarks this morning, and you're going to hear expert analysis from law enforcement officials, political analysts, and psychologists, but it's my contention that two things should be kept in mind. One, you know what the shooter in Dayton was doing just hours before he carried out his attack? He was liking tweets about the El Paso shooting. It's my contention that the media coverage of all these mass shootings, even if they don't mention the shooter's name, it just leads to more copycat crimes from these people that are clearly psychologically and emotionally disturbed. So I'm not so sure that the solution to really ending these mass shootings is to do wall-to-wall 24-hour news coverage of these mass shootings. And that is one of the subjects that I deal with, frankly. President Trump says we must vow to act with urgent resolve after this weekend's deadly mass shootings in Texas and Ohio. Addressing the nation from the White House this morning, Trump called the shootings wicked and evil.
The First Lady and I join all Americans in praying and grieving for the victims, their families, and the survivors. We will stand by their side forever. We will never forget.
At least 29 people were killed and more than 50 others were injured by gunmen in El Paso and Dayton. Trump called this a time of shock and horror for the nation. He said the U.S. is praying and grieving for the victims and families. He stressed that the nation must condemn racism, bigotry, and white supremacy, and said hate has no place in America. The New York City police officer involved in the death of Eric Garner has been suspended. Daniel Pantaleo was suspended Friday after the deputy police commissioner recommended he be let go. Pantaleo is accused of killing Eric Garner in 2014 by putting him in a chokehold. A top White House advisor has some advice for China. On Fox News Sunday, trade advisor Peter Navarro said China must end the 7 deadly sins before the ongoing trade war with the U.S. can come to an end. He described the so-called sins as stealing our intellectual property, forcing technology transfers, hacking our computers, dumping into our markets, causing companies to go out of business, heavy subsidies, importation of fentanyl, and currency manipulation. The president has characterized tariffs on China as a tax on China, even though some economists believe that the cost trickles down to consumers. Well, I'm a supporter of the president's tariff policy, and my big thing that I've repeated again and again is if you are an American consumer and if you don't want to pay a tariff, the best way to do that is to buy American. But, John, the stock market doesn't seem to be reacting too well.
No, Frankie, it does not. As we've talked about many times here, the stock market likes certainty, and when Trump says, hey, in September, I'm going to put in these tariffs no matter what, it creates uncertainty about what's to happen. We've had a huge run up here. We've broken through the support levels. And, you know, Frankie, I'm right sometimes, and I like to talk about it on the show, but I always say don't take any financial advice from me. Do your own homework. I've been off here, especially in the Bitcoin area, because I did say last week that if the government intervention starts to get too involved, I think Bitcoin could go lower. I might even short it. I hadn't shorted it, thank God, because Bitcoin is up, and it's almost like a flight to safety. It seems like as the market comes down, maybe people are starting to realize that the government is regulating it. They feel a little more comfortable because they see there's some institutionalization of the rules around it. Maybe they feel a little safer with it. And Bitcoin seems to be going up as the market's going down. So, you know, I was wrong there, but I do think that Trump is just rattling his saber with the tariffs. I don't think it's really going to happen.
Well, they're implemented. You know, I mean, the additional 10%.
September 1, he said. Right. And, you know, he's almost forcing the hand, again, of Chairman Powell at the Fed to do some kind of emergency 25 basis point cut. It's like a tantrum. You know what I mean? And we may be talking to Dr. Judy Kuriansky, talking about tantrums, about tantric experiences, and how that may be one way to offset any hate, division, and anxiety caused by the terrible mainstream media.
That's right. Dr. Judy Kuriansky will be here a little bit later. In addition to being a very well-regarded clinical psychologist, she's also an author. And one of her books has to do with, it's actually as you mentioned, the Complete Idiot's Guide to Tantric sex.
Yeah, and I'd like to get Dr. Kuriansky's psychology of what she thinks. And you made a great point earlier that, you know, the reporting of one shooting being wall-to-wall coverage, if there's someone that's right close to the edge, that may be a trigger that sets them off. And maybe these news shows should stop plastering guys' photos and all this stuff to set off other people, like cut it off.
And John, and I hope that we can drill down this point upon her as well, is if you look at the overwhelming number of these shooters, they all tend to fit a profile. The overwhelming majority of them are young, they're male, and most of them happen to be white, not all of them. So what have we done as a society to alienate this large number of white men? Everywhere you turn, I think the message is pretty clear that if you're a white male, you're really not welcome in society. We see politics, business, media, area after area that becomes increasingly welcoming to everybody else. But we get told that masculinity is toxic. We get told that if you're white, you enjoy and have any success at all because of white privilege. We get told that if you're a white male, you're not really something to be aspired to or celebrated. You're something to be mocked on TV sitcoms. And in my view, I think there is a direct correlation. Now, I'm not saying we can't also have a mental health discussion and a discussion about assault weapons, right? But yeah. I think there is a direct correlation between the alienation of the white male in American society and the fact that almost all of these shooters tend to be young white men.
And, you know, the white male, from young white male to middle-aged white male, is continuously, in my view, under attack. And when you talk about the correlation between immigration and these incidents, maybe the white male is the one who's more than likely to lose a job by excessive immigration. And when you see the left-wing media repeatedly talking about how great it is to have open borders and how great it is to give rights and freedoms and voting and driver's license and free health care to illegal immigrants, it probably just also chisels away at the esteem of young white men who maybe see no other way than to go out in a blaze of glory. And it's really getting sadder and sadder, Frank, that the country can't come together, both sides politically, and come up with some sensible gun solutions and come up with some ways to address the mental health crisis that we're facing, which is really behind most of these things. And there's a mental health crisis right here every day. We're going to take a quick commercial break, and we're going to come back right after this.